Hey guys, now I'm currently in the process of converting a flat bar hybrid bike to a drop bar gravel, and in the process of doing that I've removed the bottom bracket, or I've had it removed for me, as I didn't have the tool at the time. I do have it now, but the bottom bracket has been removed and it's a little bit crunchy. I don't know whether you can hear that, but yeah, the bearings are a little bit crunchy. So I could buy one of these fairly cheaply for 15 to 20 pounds here in the UK, but being someone who is keen to send as little as possible to landfill, I thought I'd give it a go at servicing it, putting some new bearings in, and also it's a little bit of a learning exercise. As you can see there, it already very helpfully shows which way the bottom bracket goes in, so I don't have to worry too much after taking it out wondering which side is going to be the drive side and which isn't. But the right is obviously the drive side and the left is the non-drive side. But because this is a 122.5mm long spindle, as you can see, they actually look fairly similar in length, so when I take that out I may not know which way round the spindle goes. So to make sure I do remember, what I'm going to do is on the drive side on the right, I'm just going to make some permanent marks just so I know that that side is the right side when I come to putting it all back together again. So these are fairly simple to take apart. You need a couple of tools, which hopefully you should have around at home. Now I've got this small work zone clamp that I got from Aldi here in the UK. I think this cost about £5, so it doesn't need to be a big record metal clamp, metal vise to use for this. You can use anything that's effectively going to hold the bottom bracket securely while we try and remove this spindle from the inside. What I would say though is that if you're using a vise with metal jaws, that you either wrap the threaded part of the bottom bracket here in cardboard or something like that, or put some rubber over the jaws, because what you don't want is to tighten it up and find that the metal jaws crunch against the threads and end up deforming the threads, and then obviously it won't go back into the bottom bracket shell. But with this it's not so much of a problem. I've got this rubberized material on here and you don't really need to pinch it that hard, if at all. All you really want is for the lip of the bottom bracket to just sit over the top of the jaws there, so when you get to hammering the spindle out, actually that will all just hold its own weight there and the spindle should drop out from underneath. So let's do that now. So what I would say is, don't be too scared about damaging this at all. These spindles are quite hardy. They obviously take quite a bit of punishment when they're sat through the bottom of the bike with the pedals on them. So you can give them a good whack and it shouldn't be too much of an issue. You shouldn't really need to have any worry about damaging the end of the spindle here. Perfect. And so the spindle has come out, and you can see there's still one of the bearings left on there. We'll work on that in a moment. And then what you're left with is like this empty cartridge cylinder with one of the bearings in the bottom there in the middle. So we need to work on getting that one out in a moment. But for now what we'll do is we will just close the vise up a little bit, just so it's able to hold onto the bearing there. And again, that's nice and loose there. I'm not tightening it too hard onto the spindle. It's just enough to hold onto the bearing. That is on there nice and tight, to the point where it's making my poor vise twist over. Tight as I can this time to try and stop it coming over. All right. Let's try that. Try again. Right, well I've been trying to hit at that for a while now and it seems to be stuck fast. So what I've actually done is sprayed some WD-40 on there as a little bit of penetrating fluid, and hopefully that should have worked it loose slightly. So we'll give it one more go. If this doesn't work, I'll put a little bit more penetrating oil in it. And then we'll go to work on the cylinder and the other bearing. But let's give this a go. There we go. That's got it. There we go. And then we've got the full spindle out. So moving over onto the cylinder with the remaining part of the screw, the thread for the bottom bracket. Now what you'll notice is sometimes you have to use a screwdriver, but there is a small rubberized seal that just sits over the top of the bearing, just to stop any water, dirt or any other grime getting in there and affecting the bearing. You can pull that out fairly easily. Now once you've done that, you'll be able to see the inner collar of the bearing. But one thing to note is that what I've seen people do before, with no luck, is try to hold on to the main part of the cylinder, this collar, and then hammer the bearing. What they didn't realise is that the bearing actually sits flush, sits on top of that collar. So if you're holding onto this and smashing down on the bearing, all you're doing is pushing the bearing further into the collar, which is why you need to grip onto this threaded part of the bottom bracket, and then the whole collar and the bearing should come out together. And then the easiest thing to do from there is to just grab the spindle, put it in the other end of the bottom bracket, and then try and remove the collar and the bearing from this threaded part. It's coming slowly. And there we go. And so if the bearing's stuck on there, you just repeat the process again. And this should, hopefully, come out quite easily. He says. Let's reset the vise. Replace the spindle and go again. There we go, and that is the second bearing off. So now we're left with the main spindle, the middle collar, and then the two threaded parts of the bottom bracket. So now it's just a case of repeating the process, putting the new bearings in, and as if by magic, here's two I bought earlier. What I'm going to do before reinstalling it all though is take all this away, clean it up, give it a nice good wash, make sure that any dirt or grime is cleaned out of the threads here, just make sure that this is all cleaned up inside, and then we'll go ahead and put it all back together. Oh, just one word of caution, just make sure that when you are cleaning all the bits up, including the spindle, try not to clean off your permanent marker. Although it is permanent marker, it can come off sometimes, especially if you've got some WD-40 on it or anything like that. It can then be washed away quite easily at times. So just be very careful not to wash away your permanent mark, which will tell you which way round the spindle goes. Right, so now all the parts are clean. They've all been given a nice clean up, no more grease or grime or anything like that on them. I will be keeping hold of the old bearings because, again, being someone who doesn't want to send much to landfill, I could probably reuse those. I'll pop the rubber seal off the side, give them a good clean out and re-grease them, and they should hopefully be almost as good as new. So I will keep hold of those. I won't just throw those. But for now, to get all this back together, relatively simple job, but you do need a couple of extra tools or a couple of extra little bits and pieces. So what I've got here are two old blocks of wood, just some scrap blocks of wood, with a hole just big enough for the spindle to go through, but not big enough for either of the threaded ends to slide through. And then I've got a couple of these very cheap screw-up clamps. So effectively what I'm going to do is sandwich the bearings and the threaded collars onto the spindle using these two blocks of wood. Now it's going to be a little bit fiddly putting it together, so do bear with me while I do that, but I think this is the simplest way to get everything back together with the tools that I have available to me. Now again, as I commented earlier, that I put my little permanent marker on one side of the spindle here, just making sure that the collar goes on the right way, so if I have to take this out again, or if anyone has to take this out again, they'll know which way it all goes back together. Okay, right, well it took a bit of work, took a bit more work than I expected it to, but that's just about tight enough now. I don't want it too tight because I don't want the collar to get caught when I then have to put the separate threaded part over the top. But effectively now we're just going to repeat the process with this threaded part. This one just slides on the end, so that one's not fixed as it were, but I just need to place this one over the top now and just make sure that the collar sits right in the centre so that it can slip down over the bearing and then over the collar. And then effectively once that's done, we're finished. We just have to put the rubber seals back in but then that's it. So yeah, so I just want to make sure that that collar is held in place so that this threaded part can slip right over the top of it. So that is now all completely tight in there, and that is feeling much less grindy, much less scratchy. So I'm looking forward to getting that back in the bike. The only thing left to do now is I've just put some grease inside here, and then we just need to put these rubber seals back on either end. And as soon as that's done, it's ready to go into the gravel bike conversion, and I can start getting the thing built back up again, which I cannot wait for. And if you're interested in watching the video on the whole gravel bike conversion, then stay tuned, because that video is going to be released very, very soon as well. And hopefully you'll find it interesting and useful. So yeah, stay tuned guys, but thanks very much for watching this video, and see you in the next one.